Back in Texas, we have a saying. I'll borrow it. I wasn't born here in New Zealand, but I got here as fast as I could. I love taking photos. I don't know why. It just makes me happy. And today, I'm going to tell you a secret about life, something that I figured out along the way. It's counterintuitive. And this secret will make a special kind of sense to you if you are a creative or if you're in the process of creating yourself. I'll share this secret with you at the end of our time here together, but drop a few clues along the way. Now, how did I start out as a little baby? I was born blind in one eye. I had a terrible vision in my other eye. I remember crawling around on the carpet. We had this long shag carpeting where I grew up, and I can still feel the fibers and the webbing between my fingers. I was crying. I was alone. I was sad. I couldn't find my mom or dad. I was thinking, man, this universe sucks, you know? What a cruel world. How did I go from that to this, whatever this is? By the way, I do not take myself too seriously at all. Let's get that out of the way. But yeah, so how did all this come to pass? Well, I'll tell you today through a series of stories. I've kind of broken my life into 3 different parts, kind of borrowing from one of my favorite authors, Patrick Rothfuss. And you're supposed to take risks at TED, right? So we're going to take this risk together. We're going to do a little bit of choose your own adventure action. You guys are going to help me choose which story you want me to tell from these various phases of my life. We'll call this Trey's awkward teenage years, this part. Number 1, do you want to hear raised by my mom and sister, 2, the awkward dance, or 3, Catholic school girls? All right. Okay, here we go. I heard a lot of 3s out there. All right. Well, so I went to Jesuit High School in Dallas, which is an all-boy Catholic school. And just down the road from me is where sweet ambrosia would drip down from Mount Olympus, the all-girl Catholic school. And by the way, I always wondered, like, if the Catholics are so against premarital sex, why do they make the Catholic schoolgirl uniforms look like that? I don't get it. So I had this amazing crush on this girl. We'll call her Chastity. And she had this Mediterranean olive skin and these big blue eyes and kind of this curly raven-esque hair. And the worst thing about her is she had this really bookish friend, and we'll call her Persnickety. And I was going to go, meet Chastity at the once-a-week time we got to meet these girls, actually, like at the football game, and I planned on taking our relationship to the next level. And by that, I mean maybe get up the nerve to hold her hand or something. So I went and sat by her on the bleachers, and sure enough, Persnickety came and sat down right in between us. Chastity got up to go get some Cokes or something, so I'm stuck talking to her friend. She turns to me very seriously and says, Trey, I'm going to tell everybody at both schools that you gave Chastity hepatitis. And I thought, oh my God, that sounds terrible. I didn't even know what it was. But it didn't sound good, and I don't see how it's possible because I hadn't even held her hand yet. But anyway, in all seriousness, it did cause me a lot of stress over that next week. I was really worried about it. I mean, the shame, the fear, it was really upsetting to me. And it's the worst thing that can happen to you in high school, isn't it? The worst possible thing. So I was thinking about it, and I was actually spending about 50% of my brain power worrying about this situation. And at one point, a week into it, I remember, I just stopped worrying about it because I thought, why do I care what everyone else at this high school even thinks about me? The right people are going to come into my life. And I thought, you know what? I'm a good person. In fact, I just might be kind of awesome. So I stopped spending 50% of my time worrying, and I tried to spend that 50% being awesome instead. And this really came to serve me much in a great way later in life. I got my first camera when I turned 35 years old. Right now I'm a tender 43. And I'm totally self-taught in photography. I never read a book, never took a class. I came out in a sort of a weird way. I got into this thing called HDR photography, or high dynamic range photography. And I started sharing my stuff widely all over the internet. Well, I started receiving a massive amount of hate for the kind of stuff that I do among traditional photographers. Not all traditional photographers, but quite a few. In fact, I still get quite a bit of internet hate out there. But I was able to just totally ignore it. The reason they don't like it is because I post-process my photos, which is supposed to be the devil. You should never do that. Well, not only do I post-process my photos, but I do it unapologetically and openly. I love it. It totally makes me happy. I think it's colorful and fun and pretty. I love working on the photos. It just makes me super duper happy. So I was able to completely ignore what all these people were saying about me. And if you're not into it or you don't like it or whatever, I don't even think about it. I don't even think about you. In fact, I think that ignoring people might be one of my best skills. Yeah, so my advice to you is that if you ever get any kind of hate, just fight back with awesome. All right, what's next? All right, now I'm getting older, okay? I'm headed to college. What story do you want to hear now? On stage with Captain Picard, Patrick Stewart. The next nuclear power plant, or number 3, writing a rejected novel. All right, Captain Picard, I heard. Number 1, good, you guys are geeks like me. We'll get along well. We are simpatico. Okay, so now I'm a little older. I'm going to SMU, which is Southern Methodist University in Dallas. I'm majoring in computer science and math, still very left brain stuff. I kind of want to do something artistic, but it didn't seem so practical at the time. Anyway, I was a huge Star Trek The Next Generation fan. I've seen all of them. And I would sit there on Sunday night on the couch and watch it. And remember back then when we used to watch shows, we would watch them without a laptop or a phone or an iPad. We would just watch the show. Unbelievable, the olden days. So I was walking through the student union and I saw a flyer up. It said that Patrick Stewart was coming to my university and he would be performing Shakespeare at the Meadow School of the Arts. So I was super excited. I got all dressed up, went down there, went to this huge theater, thousands and thousands of seats, but they were all totally empty except for just 2 people in the front row. This is kind of weird. So I walked down there and I sat down by him and I kind of sheepishly looked over and said, is this the right place with Patrick Stewart? They're like, yeah, we think so. It's kind of weird. So it was super awkward. And then I started getting really worried about seeing Patrick walk out on stage. Is he going to be mad or is he going to be sad? You don't want to see your hero or your idol sad. It's like, seeing your dad sad or something. I just don't want to see it. But at the same time, I was excited to see him. So it's a very complex bouquet of emotions. So anyway, he came out on stage, he looked out, and he was like, oh, and then he ran off stage. I thought, oh my gosh, this is really awkward, what's happening? But he came back out on stage, and he brought 4 chairs with him. He kind of sat them facing each other, and he walked over to us and said, would you guys like to come up on stage with me? And we were like, yes, totally. And so we got up on stage, and he says, would you guys mind if I recited The Merchant of Venice? I'm like, no, that sounds super awesome. So for the next hour, he recited the whole thing beautifully and perfectly. He did all the voices. These Klieg lights were burning down on us. And I'll never forget it. At one point, he must have been wearing this tweed jacket, this old tweed jacket. And he's doing the soliloquy from Shylock, and he slammed his chest, and dust flew up. And he's acting through the dust. And I thought, oh my God, this is one of the greatest moments of my life. He's a true actor, unbelievable. So this whole thing stuck with me, and it was very meaningful. But its true meaning didn't sink in for about 15 more years. When I started sharing my photos online, I also started with the blog, Stuck in Customs. It's very popular now, but most people don't know for the first 2 or 3 years, it was not popular at all. No one went there. Basically, just me and my mom were on the thing. But I loved doing it. I was getting my feet under me artistically. I was kind of creating myself. Every day, I would put up a new photo and write a story. I still do that. But I really loved doing it. And then I thought back to Patrick Stewart. and how there are only 3 of us there. And I realized the right people show up for you. You know, Patrick didn't walk out on that stage to see how many Facebook likes he could get or to see how many +1s or how many YouTube subscribes he might get on his channel. He just came out there because he loved it. He loved acting. Didn't matter who was there to him. And that's what I was doing with my blog. I just loved doing this no matter who showed up, so there's a certain purity to that. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I could have gotten through those first few years of the blog. So thank you, Patrick Stewart. All right. So now, getting older, now I'm in that 20-plus stage of my life. This is the last story we're going to come to here. Would you like to hear? Story number 1, the danger of peers. Story 2, the move to New Zealand. Story 3, hitchhiking naked in Mexico. Okay. All right. I don't even know why I put that on there. Well, before I tell this really embarrassing story, let me talk about this stage of your life, this 20-plus stage of your life, because you're kind of stumbling around a little bit, aren't you? I certainly was. I had my first job with Anderson Consulting, which is now called Accenture. I was doing technology consulting, technology implementations, very left-brain stuff. I still wanted to do something artistic, but I didn't know what it was. And I had this voice, this kind of throbbing in the base of my skull saying, Trey, you are meant to do something great. I don't know what it is. Maybe we'll find it someday. Maybe we'll find it. And it would just beat away there like the telltale heart, causing me a little bit of anxiousness all the time. Meanwhile, I felt like I was just kind of stumbling around. And maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you're in the audience or watching at home, and you look around you see great people doing great stuff all the time, and you think, I'm just kind of stumbling around. I can't quite get my act together. Well, I can promise you this, that when you do find it, you'll be able to look back and connect all those dots and see that you were actually stumbling into your own greatness. So let me tell you about this stumble in Mexico. I was with my friend, and we're going to go do some surfing, all right? We're in this old clunker of a car. He and I drive down this long, lonely road to an abandoned beach. We get out of the car. We just have on our swimsuits, the little Velcro thing. I put the keys in there. We go out surfing. I'm not much of a surfer dude or whatever. And then this huge wave comes along, crashes me down, rips off the bathing suit. The suit and the keys go off into the ocean. I woke up on the beach completely nude. My friend, he's laughing at me. You know, men are never consoling in times of need. So then we go over to the car, and we got to figure out what to do. You know, we've got 2 guys, 1 bathing suit, and 0 keys. That's a problem. So we argue about it, we fight about it. 30 minutes later, I find myself walking to town naked. I don't know if I won the bet or lost the bet, but there I was. And of course, I was totally dreading it the whole time. What could be worse? What could be more shameful? What could, is there anything more to be afraid of than this? So I'm walking along, and then all of a sudden I realize, wait a minute, I'm quite happy. The sun is beating on me. I have a cool breeze on my skin. I'm completely naked. My body feels good. I'm like, this is super awesome. It's great. And then, sure enough, behind me, a pickup truck comes along with a Mexican family inside. They invite me in and give me some clothes. We start singing songs. We're having Mexican food. It was like one of the greatest days of my life. And then so I realized at that point, you know, all that time I spent worrying about the future was a total waste, because the future doesn't exist. It's a fiction. Same thing with the past. The past is just a story that we tell ourselves. So the more present you are, the more your universe will unfold for you exactly the way it should. I'm a photographer. I go out there, and I do my humble best to try to make sense of the world, to try to capture it, to try to give it meaning. I have this half-baked theory that a big part about life is just trying to maximize all sensory input. You want to have all 5 senses on fire as much as possible, don't you? Let's just talk about the visual sense for a minute, because arguably the visual sense is the most potent. You want to see as much as you can in a day, don't you? In an hour, in a minute. You just want to jam as much light as possible into your eye sockets. But at the same time, you realize that you have kind of a relationship with that light. That light has no meaning without your eyes. You give it meaning. And you know that as the light comes into you, it changes you. The same way a river carves out a canyon, I believe that light carves out your soul. You see, you are created by light. I think this is a beautiful idea. Sometimes grown-ups come up to me. Notice I say grown-ups. I feel like we've actually come much too far from our natural childlike state, from the child that we once were. That's too bad. And when grown-ups come up to me and they say, "What's going on with these photos, Trey? You know, is this the real world? Is this the fantasy world? What's happening?" But if you think about it, a child would never ask that question, but they know, because there's no difference between these worlds to a child. I was talking to my daughter, Scarlett. She's 6 years old. I'm talking to her about something, and then all of a sudden she goes, "Dad, you see the unicorn over there?" I'm like, Where, a unicorn? But I think she really sees it. She may want to live in a world that's full of unicorns and fantasy stuff, and so do I. Don't you? Isn't that a magical place? And as opposed to kids, grown-ups have a very thick wall. They have a very thin veil. They vacillate very easily and go back and forth between the two worlds. But to grown-ups, these are two distinct worlds, the real world and the fantasy world, and never the twain shall meet. My work explores the tension between these two worlds, because between these two worlds is where the truth exists. And I tricked everyone a little bit today with the name of this idea. It was, what is out there? But of course, that's not the question at all, is it? The real question is, what is in here? What is in you? Because you know that everything is inside of you, which leads us to the great secret, is that it only appears that the entire universe is on the outside of us, but really, the whole universe is on the inside of us, and you literally get to create whatever you want to create. Thank you.